This is the Scott Addict 15. It's a premium carbon fibre road bike that's aerodynamically sculpted to make it as fast as possible. This is the Scott Addict eRide. It's also a premium carbon fibre road bike that is aerodynamically sculpted to make it as fast as possible. But it also has a battery and a motor. This is Leon. Leon is a cyclist who hasn't ridden in a fair few years. Life, kids, a global pandemic, it's the small things that get in the way. Today, Leon is going to be our test guinea pig to see if electric bikes really do make cycling too easy. Now, to conduct the test, we've devised a cunning loop. And like all good cycling loops, it features a variety of terrains. It has a flat, it has some undulations, and it has a climb. Now, the loop starts on a gentle gradient before hitting that steep and difficult climb, and Leon will be climbing for almost 3 kilometers by the time he gets to the top. From there, it plateaus out and he's got a nice just over 1 kilometer of flat section where we'll be measuring his heart rate, and then it's into the undulations all the way back home. To see how the assistance affects Leon's ride quality, we're going to equip him with some power meter pedals to track his power output, as well as a heart rate monitor to see exactly what happens to his heart rate as he rides along. Firstly, Leon will ride the Scott Addict RC15, the analog bike, to collect that vital data, to then benchmark his ride on the Scott Addict eRide and to see how they differ. We'll then run this data through our very sophisticated software center of Garmin Connect to see exactly how they're different and what effect it had on Leon. So Leon, before we get you out on the hill, any preconceptions, thoughts, feelings? You're from a tech and automotive background, that's right?
That's right, yeah. It's been a long time since I've ridden an e-bike, an e-road bike like this.
So you have ridden an e-bike before?
I have. It's probably about 2 or 3 years ago, and it was a lot chunkier than this one.
The early days of electric road bikes.
Yeah.
I remember them fondly. So you have ridden a road bike, or you do like riding road bikes, but you haven't done it for a little while?
No, that's right. I used to ride a lot. I used to ride pretty big distances, but I've got 2 young kids at home, and getting out of the house for more than about half an hour without me getting in trouble just doesn't happen these days. So I think the longest ride I've been on is probably about 45 minutes in the last sort of 6 weeks or so.
So have you considered electric bikes? You say you don't have much time. One of their great appeals is they let you speed up your ride so you can go that bit further in a bit less time. Is that something you've thought about?
It's not something I've thought about replacing the road bike with yet.
Right, okay. So today will be an interesting trial for you to see what let's say a modern drop bar road bike really feels like.
Yeah, it certainly looks the part.
Cool, well let's get out onto the hill. So Leon, you're back from your ride on the analog Addict. How was it? Any standout features of the loop?
The loop was good. There's a big hill on that loop.
It's a very big hill, isn't it?
I'm very much used to cycling on the flats where I live, and I forgot what a big, short, sharp, steep hill is like. So yeah, the top of that hill, I was definitely gassing when I got up there.
Heart rate was high.
Yeah, it was. It was beating in the chest, and I was when the descent came, I was like, oh, this is lovely. Sure. This is bliss. So, but I mean, it's a lovely bike, super light, and it feels like the power transfer and everything on it is fantastic. It did feel like I was having to work really hard to get it moving, but the hill took it out of me. But yeah, I think on the flats and especially on the descents, this bike felt quick.
So I had a good time.
Yeah, it's great fun.
Got the loop in your mind, because next we'll be moving on to the Addict eRide behind us, which will be interesting to get your thoughts on that. So let's get you set up and get you back out on the hill.
Oh mate, this is so easy. Yes.
Now, the Scott Addict eRide is an example of a top-of-the-range drop-barred electric road bike. It uses a Marley e-bike motion motor and battery system that offers 250 watts of support and delivers 40 Newton meters of torque. This is deliberately more gentle than competing systems, with an aim to feel that bit more natural on climbs with a steeper gradient. Its battery is neatly tucked inside the down tube, and the motor is stashed in the rear hub for a build that weighs just 10.1 kilos, making it one of the lightest bikes on the market.
So now I'm coming up to the climb of this. I'm putting out about 240 watts like it was on the other bike. It already feels so much easier.
How was the ride?
It was good. I mean, you definitely feel it on the climb.
Yeah.
Immediately. It's actually really easy to hold that 240 watts on the climbs. And I dispatched of that main hill, I don't know, like in half the time I think that I did it on the analog bike. On the flats I found it more difficult to hold that high wattage.
Yeah.
It did, I guess you can feel the weight, or...
Do you find that the assistance wasn't there?
It's not there at all, and,
yeah.
and I think actually as soon as it tails off after that initial boost, it kind of feels like there's a not dragging you backwards, but it does feel like there's a bit
I guess
more weight back
it's
there.
a bit more weight on this bike, which you've not got the assistance to overcome.
Exactly, yeah. And I think on the analog bike, getting up to that cruising speed and staying there, I just found that a little bit easier. But I guess the fact that this just destroys the hills in half the time.
Is that what it really felt like? It was
really
just
felt like that. Yeah, I mean, I could hold a conversation really in that mode anyway. I could hold a conversation going up that hill.
Sure.
Which is great.
So you rode your eRide loop in the red mode, which is mode of most assistance. Now the way these e-bikes work is that in the red mode you'll get 100% assistance, and then they dial them down throughout the modes. So you had 100% assistance of up to 250 watts. Now we can map the engine, which I thought you might like as an automotive fan, which is quite glamorous sounding, isn't it? So we can dial that assistance right back down, because you said you found that it was like really easy on the climb in that red mode. You look like you're enjoying yourself too much, so I've decided we're going to lower it. So I'm going to see what happens when we lower that down so it only gives you 20% assistance. And we're going to see what that does to your heart rate and also to your ride feel of using the bike. My prediction is it won't have that kind of kick off from the beginning, and it will feel quite a lot of difference when you're riding the climb. So for just one last time, you don't need to do the whole loop. We're just going to set you off and you're going to do the climb one final time, and we'll gather some more data.
Just the climb this time?
Just the climb.
Okay.
I guess the interesting thing to try and find out with electric bikes is there a sweet spot?
Yeah.
Could you dial in the engine so you could have a sweet spot of support, but also doesn't feel like it's taking you for a ride or it's doing all of the work?
Yeah.
And I think by playing around, that's what we're kind of hoping to find, and it'll be interesting to see what you think when you come back.
Yeah.
So let's give it a whirl.
Okay.
Okay, Leon, we're back off the hill. You've done your 2 laps. We'll start with your ride on the Addict, and you hit a maximum heart rate of 180 beats per minute. So that was probably quite close to your top end, I'd have thought. A couple of beats above that, maybe?
Yeah, I'd say so. When you can start hearing it banging in your ears. And,
yeah, you can feel your chest moving.
Exactly, yeah. It was definitely up there with being pretty gassed by the time I got to the top.
And unsurprisingly, that was towards the top of the climb, which is a real nasty piece of work, that road. And then your average heart rate was around 164 beats per minute. So it obviously leveled off after that, but those undulations on the way back home kind of kept it ticking around that point. Yeah. Now, if you take the Addict eRide, your maximum heart rate was lower across the board by almost 10 beats per minute. So it's down at like 170 beats, which is not insignificant because the route was exactly the same. You started out on that same hill, and you really said that you could feel the assistance there, and you felt like you could probably hold a conversation.
Yeah, definitely.
Going
yeah, I didn't get anywhere near that kind of max threshold heart rate on the climb with the eRide, and actually I felt kind of fresher at the end of the ride as well. But I guess that kind of makes sense because you've got an electric motor giving you a bit of an assistance throughout, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, it's interesting because your average heart rate on the eAddict ride was 162 beats per minute, so not that much different than the than the one on the normal Addict, which suggests to me that the undulations or the drags where you're chipping along at a pretty good pace, probably above the limit of the e-bike, are pushing your heart rate up there. Is that what you felt?
Definitely, and it was actually more just in your legs, really. On the eRide, I thought I was having to push a bit harder just to get it cruising, really.
Sure, and that will obviously be a pretty big factor depending on where you live about the usefulness of an electric bike, because if you live in a pan-flat area, you're pretty much going to be riding above that limit the whole time.
Yeah.
To have an electric bike shave 10 beats per minute off your max heart rate is pretty significant on one of the climbs, and you can extrapolate that. So this climb was like 3 kilometers long, with an average gradient of maybe around 5 or 6%. But if you were, say, riding in the mountains in Wales or the Alps or wherever that might be, you're starting to see some pretty significant savings in heart rate there. You had previously been riding this with 100% support mode on, so that was the maximum 250 watts of support you can get. And we cranked that right down to 20% support in recognition that, you know, some people might want to finesse the amount of effort or assistance the bike is giving them. So how did you find that when you were riding?
There was definitely a big difference between the two. The climb felt more like going back to the analog bike, and there wasn't that assistance as you were coming out of a junction. You didn't get that instant surge, which I did when you had everything sort of mapped right up. So it did feel more like riding the analog bike, but there was just enough assistance there to make the climb a little bit easier. So I was maybe a few beats per minute down from that real max threshold.
And it's interesting you say it was just a couple of beats, or you felt like it was a couple of beats below your sort of max, because that's exactly what the data says, is you're around sort of 177, 178 beats per minute mark, rather than the sort of the top 180, 181 that you were on the analog Addict. But I think that what that really shows is that there is a great degree of sort of customization in these bikes. You could crank that all the way down to 0 if you wanted, but then, like you said, you're just kind of pedaling a slightly heavier bike, so you know, where's the assistance levels of that? I think it paints a more nuanced picture than maybe people coming into electric road bikes might think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if I did have a ride that had lots of elevation, maybe having that sort of 20 or 30% would just give you the extra edge that would allow you to finish it without completely crippling yourself. But I think for me, it would allow me to be out longer and come home feeling a bit fresher, and maybe not spend the next few days nursing sore legs. And it would mean I wouldn't have to spend all that time beforehand on a turbo trainer, you know, getting back in shape just to go on a ride with some friends who have stayed in shape. You could just hop on that, really, and keep up with them on the climbs, definitely.
Now, everyone, when they think about electric road bikes, they know it's going to be easier on the climb because that's what they're designed to do. They give you assistance up until a certain speed limit. However, what they maybe don't think about is how that bike then rides on the flat or on undulations when you're chipping along above that speed limit. And there was something really interesting in your data here. So on the analog Scott Addict, the RC bike, your maximum heart rate was way higher. It's like 180 beats per minute. But it recovered much quicker when you went over the crest of the hill and was riding along the flat. Compared to the Scott Addict eRide, where your max heart rate was lower by about 10 beats per minute, but it recovered slower when you got onto the flat. And that discrepancy in heart rate recovery is really interesting to see, because that kind of shows exactly where these two bikes come into their own. Now, did you feel that when you got over the crest of the hill and onto the flat?
Yeah, most definitely. The analog bike just felt like a much easier machine just to get up to cruising pace on. And yeah, as you came over that crest, it was almost like a false flat, really. There was still a little bit of climbing to do, but with that one, I felt like I could just pick up the pace much quicker and get back into the swing of things, where with this, as soon as the assistance cuts out, you do kind of feel that extra mass, I guess.
Sure, yeah. And now this bike weighs about 10.1 kilos, which is incredible for an electric road bike, but that is obviously still that bit heavier than this, which hovers around the 8 kilo mark. So there's about 2 kilograms difference there, which is obviously coming into play when you're going over the top of that climb. So that's definitely something to consider when you're thinking about electric road bikes. So there you go. Do electric road bikes make cycling too easy? Well, I'm not sure it's as simple as a yes or no. And today's test with Leon did find some very interesting things to discuss. Now, if you have any other points or questions, then do leave them in the comments section below and we'll do our best to answer them. If you have enjoyed this video, do give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Now, I'll be back soon with some more great tech content and I'll see you then.